Welcome to Tokyo Wave, recorded in a live studio in Harajuku, Japan, with your hosts Aaron and Parker. All right, everyone, welcome to episode 54 of Tokyo Wave. We are hosts Aaron Randall
and Parker Allen. On Tokyo Wave, we bring you weekly updates from our studio in Harajuku.
Join us in segments featuring this week's top news,
political happenings,
business,
and other random garbage.
Here are this week's top news highlights.
Japan tightens rules on COVID-19 test certificates for foreigners.
22% of Japan firms eye fewer new hires for fiscal year 2022 as pandemic bites.
Japanese local governments throw away leftover COVID vaccines after appointments canceled. Yikes.
Just shaking my head at that one. This week in Japan.
So our first item this week is Japan tightens rules on COVID-19 test certificates for travelers.
Kyoto News has reported that Japan tightened its rules on April 19th for coronavirus test certificates needed to be submitted by all passengers upon arrival at Japanese airports, with those failing to meet required conditions to be denied entry into the country in principle.
Since March, Japan has been asking airlines to deny boarding of passengers without negative coronavirus testing results taken within 72 hours of departure.
Up until April 18th, the country's quarantine authorities still allowed those who had come to Japan with insufficient certificates to stay at a designated facility and retake a coronavirus test after 3 days.
I've actually heard about this. It's like the COVID gulag. And so basically they'll take you to a hotel and forcibly quarantine you, and then once you get the negative test after 3 days, you can leave. But once you're there, you cannot leave the hotel room.
Yeah, we might have the same friend who went through this recently. They were posting on Instagram, and like the room was so small he couldn't even like extend his legs. Like it's like I don't even know where they're finding these facilities to hold people, But authorities said that this special treatment, such as being able to come to Japan without the negative test, will no longer be available as the country reels from surging infections.
To enter Japan currently, a passenger needs to obtain a certificate that proves negative results for the virus based on nasal or saliva samples, which need to be taken within 72 hours before the departure of the flight.
Japan does not approve antigen or antibody tests as certificates for entering the country.
Given the spread of the virus, Japan currently only allows entry of Japanese nationals and resident foreigners, as well as foreigners with special exceptional circumstances.
Japan is also requesting domestic and foreign airlines to restrict the number of passengers planning to enter the country.
You know, this is also connected to the continuing ban on the issuance of new visas to come to Japan. And a lot of people, students, employees that have been assigned to work in Japan are waiting to enter the country because since the state of emergency in early January, Japan has effectively shut its borders for new entries.
Yes. My heart really goes out to especially the study abroad students. Man, there's so many like Facebook groups and online forums dedicated to this, to getting updated information, because could you imagine this of happening when we came to Japan?
Well, and also there's no guarantee that we might not go back to the old regime until October, where even residents got stuck outside of Japan and could not re-enter into the country. No, I think it's a valid situation as the number of infections is still kind of not improving in Japan. It seems like the government is using this as one of the few tools that they have, given that domestically there really isn't a legal framework to do a forced lockdown, etc. So really the sort of border entry restrictions are the only thing that the government can use as a virus mitigation policy. And, you know, whether it's an effective policy or not stands to question. Obviously, the people stuck outside of Japan are saying, what the hell? Why aren't you letting people in? This is, weird for a democratic nation to be doing this, but it's really unclear what's going to happen from here on.
We've had guests on the show that were finally allowed back into Japan after the ban was lifted. And they told us, wild stories about how mostly the airlines, the terminal flight going into Tokyo, the airlines just by default don't want you to board, and like they'll look at your paperwork even if you have it all and be like, oh, this isn't enough. So the fact that they're making this even more strict, and the last line in this article, right, saying they're going to saying that Japan is requesting domestic and foreign airlines to restrict the number of passengers planning to enter the country, is so gray and non-defined, right? So are they going to give them like secret quotas, like only 20 foreign passengers per flight or something?
It's like trying to get into a trendy nightclub. It's like, oh, no, not with that shirt. You're not getting on this plane. Come back next week.
Yeah, man.
Loser.
God, this is so stressful.
Next up, 22% of Japan firms eye fewer new hires for fiscal year 2022 as pandemic bites.
A new Kyoto News survey published on April 18th showed that 22% of major companies in Japan are planning to cut new hires for the business year starting next April from the current year, indicating many firms remain cautious about the outlook amid the coronavirus pandemic.
In the survey covering 110 firms, many of those planning to curb new hires were in sectors hit hard by the pandemic, such as transport and tourism, which saw demand evaporate.
Helped by a recovery in the US and Chinese economies, manufacturers, meanwhile, expect to hire more new graduates, citing business expansion plans.
Major Japanese companies recruit new graduates at the start of each fiscal year, often beginning the hiring process roughly a year in advance.
Maybe not all of our listeners are aware, but the act of job hunting in Japan is completely different from anything you'll see in most Western and even other Asian countries.
No, I think the Japanese system is quite unique in that really once you're about in your third year in university, basically your studies fall second to finding a job first. And this has even become a bit of a problem because schools don't get the full attention of students because they're busy doing shukatsu or job hunting activities. And these are extremely intensive. There's tests and interviews and all-day seminars and internship program-esque things, and it's just hoop after hoop after hoop that these students have to jump through in order to potentially score a slot at a famous company. I think the average Japanese handwrites about 100 resumes too during this process. And you got to handwrite them too. I mean, in the kind of push for a digital economy, it just really seems out of touch with the modern age. But for whatever reason, everything else in Japan, even though it modernizes, this hiring system is still very antiquated. And I think that companies that are used to doing this, it's the way that they've done it, obviously, for a long time. And the major companies that advise on HR, like Recruit and Pasona, are also making lots of money advising these companies on how to get the best new grads. And it's just become this sort of self-fulfilling prophecy where the companies do all of this, pageantry because that's how you get the good new employees. And, whether it's inefficient or it's stupid or, if you look at it from a global lens, it looks kind of ridiculous, but that's the way that we do it here. So that's the way it is for now, at least.
Find out your applicant's true personality with our AI resume scanning service.
Ooh, yes, their kanji looks strange. So we think they're actually going to be a serial killer.
This has to exist, though.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's really weird stuff. And the whole new grad hiring system is also kind of crazy if you look at it from the startup side. And when I'm hiring people, one of my major selling points is we won't make you go through that.
Yeah.
Because it's stressful. I mean, I think if you're a really high performing university student, I mean, this whole process it makes you feel stupid. It made me feel stupid, and so I didn't do it as a result.
Yeah. I attempted to do it for like a month, but then I just I got lucky.
I went to that thing at Tokyo Big Sight, that big recruitment fair, and it was the weirdest shit I had ever experienced in my entire life. And I'm like, whatever I do, I don't want to do this. I cannot make myself do this.
Really dehumanizing, I think.
Yeah, it's really weird.
Yeah.
That's one of those few moments where, no longer how long you've been in this country, it'll give you that culture shock. Like, what is this? Everybody's wearing the same black suit with a blue tie. It's like, what in the hell is going on? Is this like it looks like a recruitment seminar for some weird doomsday cult.
Yeah. Yeah. It's nuts. So, according to the Kyoto survey, a total of 24 firms in sectors ranging from materials to energy are scaling back hiring for fiscal year 2022. 37 firms, or 34%, said they will maintain the same level as fiscal year 2021.
Only 19 companies, or 17%, are seeking to increase new hires, and 25, or 23%, are still undecided.
Some of the firms making no change to their plans for fiscal year 2022 drastically cut new hires for fiscal year 2021 through next March.
Kyoto carried out the survey between early March and mid-April, and the 110 respondents were major Japanese companies including Toyota, Nissan, Sony, Japan Airlines, Nintendo, and Mizuho Financial Group.
Wow, that's a pretty broad...
AKA all of the big famous companies that have extremely pain in the ass shukatsu processes. I guarantee you.
Yeah.
They probably use that AI system that you just joked about.
Yeah.
Without joking about it.
It's got to exist. All right, and up next, Japan local governments throw away leftover COVID vaccines after appointments canceled.
You gotta have seen this one coming. So the Mainichi has reported that as the administration of coronavirus vaccines has begun for elderly adults in Japan, there have been a series of cases in which local government bodies have disposed of leftover doses of the vaccines due to people canceling their vaccination appointments.
In the States, they just they let everybody know that there's cancellations and extra people show up, right? It's always like an extra 10 or 20 people at these vaccination sites in the States.
Well, I think also the way that they're doing it in Japan is just so focused on being fair and equal and doing everything in the right order. But that does not jive with the inevitable anomaly that is people who don't show up.
Yep. So the vaccines must be used within several hours after they are unsealed.
Minister of Administrative Reform and Coronavirus Vaccines, Taro Kono, has urged local governments to use up the vaccines without disposing of them by finding someone new to vaccinate. But local government officials are at a loss as to how to prioritize who gets the leftover vaccines.
So many things in that just make me laugh.
This is if you wrote a book on what the biggest problem facing Japan's administrative branch is, this is that problem right here.
Yeah.
We didn't know what to do, so we just threw them away.
We didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Well, we had Tanaka go out and try to find some people, rile up. He carried the shot and needle with him. He was ready to give the vaccine on the spot, and he only had a 2-hour window. But, actually, we haven't heard from Tanaka since then.
So the city of Kyoto in Western Japan began vaccinating residents and staff at nursing homes on April the 12th. But on April 12th and 13th, the city government disposed of 3 doses of the vaccine in total.
According to the city's Medical and Health Planning Division, it had planned on vaccinating a total of 40 nursing home residents and staff on April 12th, but 2 of the staff were unable to receive the vaccine because of work scheduling conflicts, forcing the city to dispose of 2 doses of the vaccine. The city had known it would end up with one surplus dose on April 13th, and the Medical and Health Planning Division had approved of the disposal. The division now says that it made a naive decision.
No shit. Also, in the Shiga Prefecture capital of Otsu, also in western Japan, which began mass vaccinations of people aged 85 and older, 7 doses of the vaccine were left over. People eligible for vaccination had to reserve spots in advance, but the leftovers were due to cancellations of those appointments.
I wonder if the reservation process is all done on like a really bad Japanese website.
I have a stinking suspicion that fax machines are involved.
Yeah. But how funny would the 85 and older crowd has to register on like a website that doesn't work? I don't know, maybe.
This is different from the vaccination thing, but you know, now if you want to send a package to the United States, you can't just go to the post office and write the information. You have to sign up for an online system and register all of the information in the system, and then print out the information and take that to the post office.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
And the system is absolute garbage.
Wow.
And if you do it on a smartphone, it gives you a QR code that you can take to the post office.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do it on a computer, you have to print it out. So if you accidentally do it on a computer but don't have a printer, guess what?
You're screwed.
Exactly.
And all the information just, there's a back door to the CCP, so it just all gets funneled out there.
And if you go to the post office and complain about it, they'll say, sorry, we know the system is really bad. Yeah, well, can I like write the form and send the package? No.
Is this COVID related, or they're just trying to regulate more packages being sent to the States?
I have no idea, but I mean, it's another example of, you know, an easy system. You know, you write stuff on a form and send a package. You can't do that anymore because rules. I guess this way is more fair.
The Otsu municipal government had announced for possible cancellations to begin with and had planned to vaccinate medical workers on the vaccination center who wanted to be inoculated if there turned out to be a surplus of vaccines. Following these plans, of the 7 leftover vaccines, 6 doses were administered to 1 physician and 5 pharmacists. However, 1 dose that was left over on the first day of vaccinations was disposed of because all the doctors and nurses who were there had already received their vaccinations, and the pharmacist who had been a candidate to receive a leftover vaccine had already finished their work for the day and left the vaccination center. The 1 leftover vaccine is said to have been due to a last-minute cancellation, and city officials are calling on the public to get in touch with them as soon as possible if they are canceling their vaccination appointments.
Because otherwise, they don't have a plan. Great. The fun doesn't stop there. In Tokyo's Hachioji City, 2 people with appointments on April 12th did not show up at a mass vaccination center, and their doses were thrown out. The municipal government said it decided that it could not guarantee fairness if it allotted the 2 doses to other older adults. Also, in the Fukushima prefecture city of Koriyama, a woman canceled her appointment on April 13th, leading the municipal government to dispose of her dose.
I don't even know what to say, man. This is so frustrating.
Well, I mean, this happened early on in the United States, and I think we kind of saw this coming because it's a new system. They're starting to roll it out, and they're trying to move very quickly and do things efficiently. But at the same time, there's this thing that everything has to happen in the right order, and everything happens to happen in this fair and equitable manner, which when you're dealing with something unpredictable like people showing up for a vaccination, it's impossible.
Yeah.
So I think the government needs to revisit this whole, you know, fair and equitable bullshit, which is what it is, because there's always going to be lack of equity in various ways that they're going to go about this. So, I mean, unfortunately for the Japanese bureaucracy, they're just going to have to be more flexible about this. And we can only hope that the administration is going to issue more directives and clear guidance on what these municipal governments are supposed to do when they have leftover doses, because obviously if we leave them to their own devices, they're going to throw away damn vaccines. And last time I checked, we need those vaccines.
Yeah. I mean, They really they have to understand that whatever, they have these rules and they're trying to guarantee fairness, but we're in a pandemic and people are dying, and we have something that can prevent people from dying. I mean, they could just team up with NHK, any municipal government that has leftover vaccines that are good for 48 hours, announce it. We've got 8 vaccines here. First come, first serve.
Oh, I thought they were going to send the NHK collection people with the vaccines. Do you have a TV and do you need a vaccine?
You didn't pay your $20 yet, though, so no vaccine for you.
That's one way to get the foreigners to pay the NHK guy.
They got the NHK guy and a mobile nurse unit. She's got a freezer on her back with all the vaccines ready to go. We can give it to you right now. You just need to pay the past 3 years that you haven't paid. I got the credit card machine. I've got everything with me. Isn't that funny? They walk around with the credit card machine.
I mean, if only it could be that easy.
Yeah.
We have the technology.
All right, and up next on Tokyo Panic Room, we're going to talk about Japan's vaccine supply. You're now listening to Tokyo Wave. Tokyo Panic Room.
So, a recent Nikkei Asia report talks about how on the morning of April the 18th, Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga spoke with Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla by phone just as Suga was wrapping up his short trip to Washington in order to request additional coronavirus vaccines.
The call was not universally welcomed in the government, where many were leery of the country's leader stepping in to negotiate directly.
But the gambit worked. Bourla said he wanted to coordinate closely with the Japanese government, and Japan is set to receive enough doses by the end of September to vaccinate all residents as a direct result of that call.
That's kind of big, right?
I'm surprised more people aren't talking about it. I mean, it's absolutely massive.
I mean, if you got the leader of the third largest economy coming to you and you're Pfizer, and they're like, please give us vaccines. I'm sure that CEO's like, hell yeah, we'll get you guys 2 times the vaccines you need.
It's also scary that, this multinational pharmaceutical company has the clout, obviously, in this pandemic situation to be like, we're not going to talk to Tito. Put Michael Jackson on the phone. We want to hear about this moonwalk he's so good at.
We want to hear more Thriller, man. We need our Thriller version too. God. It's so true, man.
When you think about it, it's some pretty scary shit.
Yeah.
And indeed, Suga's involvement may have been necessary.
When Taro Kono, Minister for Regulatory Reform and Suga's chosen point man for the vaccination campaign, went to talk with Pfizer back in January, he received an unexpected response, according to sources close to the minister. The company insisted on negotiating with Suga.
Dun, dun, dun! The health ministry announced that month that Pfizer had signed a contract agreeing to make every effort to supply 144 million vaccine doses by year end. But this was not an ironclad commitment, and Kono could not provide a clear timetable for how much vaccine would be delivered when.
Pfizer's insistence on going straight to the top did not come out of the blue. Last December, the Prime Minister's office, responding to Suga's frustration at the health ministry's lack of progress on securing vaccines, contacted Pfizer to negotiate directly, a move that would, under normal circumstances, be a last resort.
By playing this card so early to compensate for the health ministry's failure to get progress, Tokyo may have weakened its position in the future.
Kono persisted in trying to work with Pfizer. In late February, with the company expanding European production, he announced that enough doses would be shipped throughout the country by the end of June to vaccinate everyone 65 and older. So that's the most recent information prior to this podcast that I knew of.
Yes. And so this Washington, D.C. call, I don't know why it happened, why it had to happen in Washington, D.C. I mean, you could have taken it from Tokyo, but for whatever reason, this is what happened. And so it looks like with this new information, the supply side seems to be handled for the time being, but Tokyo is actually still stumbling on a different hurdle, which is the European Union's export controls, which is something we have been hearing about before.
So the EU in January began requiring advanced authorization for shipments of vaccines made in Europe, including in the Belgium-based Pfizer plant, making Japan's allotment to destinations outside the bloc.
When I heard this news, it was terrifying because this obviously will directly impact Japan's ability to vaccinate its population, because still, as of the time of this recording, only the Pfizer vaccine has been approved for use in Japan. They're working on getting the Moderna approval, which could happen as early as the end of this month, but the AstraZeneca approval looks like it's not happening anytime soon. And so we really only have one option. And so as a direct result of that, Japan's bargaining position with Pfizer has become extremely divisive.
I hate to be like the bear of doom and gloom, but with all these variants of the virus, by the time we finally get Pfizer, what if it doesn't even work?
People are talking about that too. This is
it's evolved.
Yeah. Oops.
Oh my God.
And obviously, we won't know how effective the vaccine is in stemming the pandemic until everybody's been vaccinated. And guess what? That is not going to happen for another 6 months.
See, that's what America's doing. I think Americans in general, generally speaking across the board, have forgotten about the pandemic, and they're just vaccinating everyone. See what happens, you know? And they're testing a lot of different vaccines in the States, right? Everyone's like, oh yeah, I got the Pfizer, I got the blah 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 blah. You know,
I got the Coca-Cola vaccine. Tastes delicious.
It came in a can.
So with this EU problem, Minister Kono leveraged his connections from his stint as foreign minister to urge the EU and the Belgian government to make an exception, or alternatively to grant bulk approvals for Japan. In addition, the ambassador to the EU from Japan, Yasushi Masaki, and the ambassador to Belgium, Makita Shimokawa, both previously served as high-level foreign ministry officials under Kono. So the negotiation stage was set on the Japanese side. However, despite all of these efforts, the restrictions still apply to Japan as of today.
So the vulnerability that comes from relying on foreign sources for the crucial vaccine has been made painfully clear to Kono, who has called repeatedly for the Japanese government to support domestic vaccine development and production. Amen. I agree with him right there.
Obviously, this is easier said than done. I mean, I would imagine that if it were easy or there was some sort of infrastructure to support domestic vaccine production, that would already be happening. Of course, there was talk about Japan domestically producing the AstraZeneca vaccine, but it looks like the approval schedule for that is still unclear. And there are also reports that there are some bad side effects. And I mean, you've seen the news about that vaccine. So I don't know why Japan can't manufacture the Pfizer vaccine in Japan. If nobody's had that good idea yet, would be very appreciated, but it just doesn't sound like it's going to happen.
Yeah. You know, having worked in biotech, while we were talking about this, the big thing in my mind is why the hell are they not doing this in Japan? But then I was remembering back to my previous work, and reagents, antibodies, most of the stuff comes out of Europe, globally speaking. They do some production in like the northeastern United States, but it's mostly Europe. That's where most of the warehouses are for, you know, any kind of research, life science product, or vaccines, etc. You can probably imagine like every world government is probably like calling these guys every day, like 6 times, 7 times a day. You know, when are we getting our supply of vaccines?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously, I'm sure Prime Minister Suga had lots of reasons to want to talk to President Biden, but at the top of my mind is that, I mean, you saw this meeting, this announcement. I'm sure that Suga also spoke with Biden, and Pfizer is an American company. Obviously, it's multinational, but this idea of securing more vaccine doses faster is really crucial to Japan and also crucial to the future leadership of the Suga administration. And so I'm sure that Prime Minister Suga knows that his success in vaccinating the population will translate into success as being able to continue being our nation's prime minister. But the opposite also holds true.
Yeah.
Let's not sugarcoat it. If Japan's vaccination schedule doesn't really get its shit together very quickly, this is going to translate into bad reviews of the electorate on the Japanese government. And guess who is going to be looked at as the culprit?
Yeah.
Prime Minister Suga. He's really behind the ball, and I think he knows that he has to get big success on this issue. So I think the DC visit was very positive. I think we'll probably have one of our guests come in soon to talk about that visit, because it's actually a lot to unpack, and probably there are some things that we might have not picked up on. And it seems like, especially in the American media, it was widely ignored. So I think this meeting between Suga and Biden actually had a lot more importance than it's being given in the media. But we'll have to see where it goes from here. Obviously, through that meeting with Pfizer, Japan essentially was able to firm up this commitment where we were going to get the vaccine doses by the end of the year. That's been rolled up to the end of September, which is good. But still, Japan needs to work on its vaccination scheme. These local governments need to have some guidance on how to use unused vaccines so that there are no unused vaccines. And this process has to be done at a much higher scale as it is being done currently.
Yeah.
And so it really stands to question whether those resources will be allocated properly. So, I mean, by the end of September, that actually sounds pretty aggressive, but it needs to be aggressive. It needs to be even more aggressive. But the question is, can the government deliver on that?
I have to agree. This will make or break Suga's longevity as prime minister. I mean, if he can get all residents vaccinated by the end of September, that'd be amazing. But as you said, the rollout is going to be the biggest issue, and the bureaucracy, the local logistics. You know what would be really cool is if one of these gigantic tech companies that has information and geolocation data and personalized data on everyone globally, like Facebook or Google, would help with something like this, right? What if Facebook, you know, a lot of people don't trust Facebook, but they have all of our data. So what if Facebook helped with distribution and said, hey, there's available vaccines here? Or what if Google helped? What if Uber helped, right? All these people have...
But Aaron, they don't take facts.
Right. I mean, I don't know. I see a lot of opportunity here, actually, because the government's going to do a shitty job. We both know this, right? I think like even a local Japanese private company stepping in, I don't want to say any names because there's very few that could actually like probably get this done or even aid and assist. But
somebody call Super Mario. We need his special skill set.
I mean, but how cool would that be, right? Like,
there's even Dr. Mario.
Yeah, Dr. Mario.
Yeah. We just have to, he's not going to throw pills. He's going to throw jabs.
I mean, like from like an app developer, data science perspective, I mean, isn't this a huge opportunity for somebody to step in and create like a third party assistant between the government and the people to like let people know, oh, there's 10 vaccines available in this district.
Yeah, it sounds like some sort of like a SaaS or like a kind of a Salesforce type application.
Yeah. I mean, if we're talking about a big tech company, they could do this overnight if they really wanted to aid Japan or to aid any other country that's having difficulty with this.
Yeah, it's with this whole pandemic, I feel like all of the technology that we sort of relied on to answer all of the difficult questions that we have it hasn't failed us, but I think we realized that there are a lot of real world analog limitations to what we can do, even with technology.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I mean, even things like this whole supply issue, like why did Japan's leader, the top dog in Japan, have to have a phone call with the CEO of a pharmaceutical company to secure vaccinations by September? Why did that have to happen?
Not sure. But,
it's weird. It kind of reminds you of how, as sort of modernized our society and civilization are, a lot of parts of it are still very analog.
If I was like one of Suga's advisors, like, and I'm like pretending like Suga's like part of the mob or whatever, just like an old guy who actually logically knows what's happening, I'd be screaming at Suga, give him money, offer him money, like, because it's like, God damn.
And I mean, that must have been what the conversation was about, because, they're a for-profit company. I mean, obviously these doses apparently cost different amounts depending on who's asking and how fast they want it. I mean, it sounds like, these pharmaceutical companies, sound more and more like drug dealers by the minute. It's like, I need it by midnight. Can you get it to me by midnight? Yeah, but the price is going to go up.
Some other country, has been waiting on Pfizer to get back to them for the past 10 days. But after the Japan deal, they just like started ignoring them, Yeah.
Have you been watching the news? Yeah, your vaccines, you get them next year.
Yeah. Yeah, Japan just gave us a 2x the price. So unless you can do something to give us a better offer, it's going to be a 2022 summer.
Yeah, maybe one of those beautiful, fighter jets that your country is so good at making might just kind of, fall off the back of a truck and, be parked right next to a yacht that's put in the name of this, offshore company, Bada bing, bada boom. Maybe then, we can have all your vaccines tomorrow.
Oh, man, we got to buy some stock in Pfizer. Damn. I haven't checked, but...
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Right now, Pfizer really has Japan by the balls, and that is terrifying.
Yeah. Wow.
Tokyo Wave, definitely not sponsored by Pfizer.
Stonk tip of the week. Pfizer's a buy. Hey, listener, that's right. You listener right there.
Who do you think should be our next guest on Tokyo Wave? Let us know. Drop us a line at wave@tokyowave.jp.
We hope you enjoyed Tokyo Wave.
If you haven't already, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube.
Join us again next week on Tokyo Wave.